Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. I wanted to see why that video was demonetized and blocked worldwide because of a song from the Spider-Verse soundtrack that played in public. The whole 2 hours is just blocked now. Uh, YouTube, the rule is dumb. That rule is dumb. Whatever. Hmm. I'm a sleepy boy. Love you too, Rach. Give a few minutes for everybody who was here to get back here. Let's go. Welcome back, Eric. All right. Who's ready for some John Keel? I love you fucking weirdos. Don't let anybody say any different. All right. Where were we? Does anybody remember? I think it was right here. Yeah. Moonstone Mystery was our last chapter. That's right. This chapter that we're on now is called Clones, Hybrids, and Sleepers. And we are on the back third of the book. We've got maybe 5 more chapters, maybe 5 more chapters to go. John Keel. From the mountains of northern Sweden to the hills of Tennessee, one of ufology's most persistent rumors has been enjoying a rebirth. The rumor first began circulating in 1950, only 3 years after flying saucers had suddenly emerged as a topic for discussion and investigation. In the 1960s, it swept the world and became an accepted truth to many advanced ufologists. But its basic premise was so obscure and preposterous that many rejected it and forgot it until the upsurge of landings and contacts in 1973. This is the rumor or theory that the UFOnauts are conducting biological experiments with human beings and may even be creating an army of pseudo humans by using the sperms and ovaries from unsuspecting Earthlings. The number of reported contacts supporting the biological experiment theory is mounting rapidly now as more and more investigators take an interest in the once shunned contact cases. In the mid 1960s, I visited several college communities in the Northeast and collected a series of incredible reports from sincere young men and women who claimed they had been abducted by UFOs and subjected to sexual experimentation. The males said that their sex organs had been examined and special instruments had extracted semen from them. The females claimed they had either been forcibly raped aboard UFOs or instruments, usually long needles, had been inserted into their lower abdomens to remove substances from their ovaries. Only two cases of this type received any publicity: the Vias Boas incident in Brazil in 1957 and the Betty and Barney Hill abduction in 1962. 57 was the Vias Boas incident in Brazil. However, neither case had been published when I came across the first witnesses to tell me these things. Early ufologists, however, knew of such reported biological experiments and based their hybrid theory on them. Essentially, the theory asserts that there are living among us today people who are crossbreeds, half earthling and half space person. These people are allegedly loyal to and controlled by the UFOnauts. They are hybrids. The time will come, the theory goes, when a large part of the Earth's population will be hybrid. There's more. Many women involved in close encounters with UFOs become pregnant soon afterwards, although they have no memory of anything beyond a simple UFO sighting. Some are more than a little astonished by their unexpected pregnancies. I have kept in close contact with several of these ladies and followed the developments with great interest. The children they produce seem exceptionally bright and are frequently surrounded by poltergeistic manifestations in their early years. Otherwise, they appear to be normal. In more than one case, the lady's husband was slightly disturbed because their offspring did not resemble him or her. It all sounds like John Wyndham's science fiction classic, The Midwich Cuckoos, but the facts are there. In the 1960s, I tried to interest several different editors in an article on this intriguing aspect of the UFO phenomenon, but they all felt it was too far out, as indeed it is. It will come as a shock to many ufologists who are now circulating the hybrid rumor that this concept is thousands of years old and is, in fact, an important part of occult, psychic, witchcraft, and religious lore. The sexual intervention of supernatural entities is mentioned throughout the Bible, in the story of Abraham, for example, and Christianity is founded on the belief that Mary was impregnated by the angel Gabriel. Witches are said to have intercourse with the devil. Gypsies believe that any woman who is seduced by the devil has special powers afterwards, and such women are given very special respect. Numerous rites in black magic involve sex practices and sexual submission to the strange entities who materialize during the rites. And Oaspi, the amazing book written by a New York dentist while in a trance state back in the 1880s, there are pages of pictures of special children with sober faces and deep black eyes, who were supposedly hybrids planted here by some unknown force. Several modern contactees have seen strange things happen to their families. Their teenaged daughters have staggered home claiming they have been sexually assaulted by space beings. Their wives have disappeared for hours or even days and returned suffering from amnesia and pregnant. Several of the early contactees in the 1950s enraged the scientific ufologists with their tales of having been required to express their manhood on other planets or while flying around in saucers. The hybrid concept has a marked effect on the ufologists who accept it blindly. They become totally paranoid. They believe that hybrids have infiltrated highest government circles, that they are even running our world. In the 1960s, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara was frequently accused by contactees of being a hybrid. A related theory is the clone rumor. A clone is an exact duplicate of a living organism. Theoretically, a clone can be manufactured from a single cell of your body. Each cell contains all the necessary biological information to construct a duplicate. Scientists around the world have been working on this process for years. Several modern contactees told how they were taken aboard a UFO and a small sample of their skin was scraped from their arm. If we had the technology and know how, a small sample is all we would need to create an exact duplicate of a person. Exact duplicates of several well known ufologists have been seen by reliable witnesses. In occult lore, such duplicates are called doppelgangers. They are an age old psychic phenomenon. Just to be clear, the doppelganger in psychic lore, as what he calls it, in occult lore, the duplicate, the doppelganger in occult lore, is actually not always seen by the person. If you see somebody's doppelganger, it means they're about to die. That's what the doppelganger is. They are an age old psychic phenomenon. In the 1960s, a doppelganger of New York ufologist James Moseley turned up on a number of occasions, and a doppelganger of yours truly appeared repeatedly in several states, from Long Island, New York to West Virginia, while I was actually occupied elsewhere. Were these characters clones, physical entities made of solid flesh, or were they psychic projections of some sort? Usually, no. Usually, the idea of the doppelganger is is very much more strange than that. Usually, when people engage with the doppelganger, it doesn't know that it's a doppelganger. Um, it looks exactly like them, would be doing exactly what they're doing, but if you engage with them, has no knowledge of who you are. Uh, usually. Sometimes the really weird ones, they will think they're you, and then when you, or they'll act like, or they'll claim to be you, like a mimic, sort of. And then when you tell the person, "I saw you, and we had this whole conversation," I'm like, "That wasn't me." Um, the doppelganger thing is uh, strange. But the ufologist, this is something that recurs in his work and other people's work. The You should be creeped out. It's Spoopyween. We're trying to be creepy. Why do you think I zipped my door closed? Several years ago, a young Englishman came to me with some very interesting photographs. He had attended an outdoor rally in Britain and had snapped pictures of the crowd. When he examined the photos later, he was surprised to see two strange looking men standing in the crowd. They were not together, but were widely separated in the crowd. Both were dressed identically in black turtleneck sweaters. Both had very short hair, unusual for that time, and for men of their apparent age. Oddest of all, both had identical facial characteristics. They looked like twins. They had high cheekbones, angular faces, and thin lips. They really stood out in the photograph. Similar beings form an integral part of our Men in Black, MIB, lore. These MIB have even attended flying saucer lectures and conventions. In some reports, there have been three of them, all looking exactly alike. Were they clones? Today, there are many people who have become convinced that they themselves really are hybrids. A number of contactees, some of them quite well known, started life as orphans and never learned the identity of their true parents. Like Lee Harvey Oswald, some contactees have been seen in places where they have never been. How the scientific ufologist ranted and railed against Howard Menger when he told stories of doppelgangers and teleportation. Some contactees have lived in terror for years, fearing that they were going to be whisked off to some farm on some other planet and bred like cattle. Are there really hybrids and clones living among us? If there are, I have never personally met one, but I have met a lot of very peculiar people. Perhaps you lost a few minutes of time when you saw a weird object in the sky a few years ago. Perhaps there's another you out there somewhere. Sleepers. In the esoteric parlance of the intelligence community, a sleeper is a spy who is kept deliberately inactive for years while living in deep cover. He or she remains on the payroll but doesn't do any actual spying until finally, sometimes years after entering the intelligence service, the organization has a special need. For example, it was recently revealed that an East German spy was sent to live in West Germany and carry out one specific mission. His job was to train his own 5-year-old daughter and promote her into a job, after she had grown up, as a secretary in a West German government office. It sounds incredible, but this kind of long range planning and manipulation is common in the shadowy James Bond world of intelligence and espionage. Sleepers are planted throughout our society. Some live and work in a community for 20 years or more, accepted by everyone as teachers, journalists, or businessmen, drawing a monthly check from some agency in addition to their regular income, and waiting for the day when they might suddenly be called upon to break open a safe, take furtive photographs, or enter, or even, in extreme cases, shoot somebody between the eyes. Candy Jones, the famous model and wife of the late Long John Nebel, the New York radio talk show star, was a slightly different kind of sleeper. Through hypnosis and drugs, the CIA turned her into a deep cover spy. She was sent on missions in a trance state, using a false name and even, believe it or not, a false personality given to her through brainwashing techniques. When she returned from these missions, she resumed her own life and personality and had no memory whatsoever of her escapades as a spy. She was a victim of an intelligence practice that has been use that has been in use for 40 years, and she sounds very much like the inspiration for one of the characters in Android's Dream of Electric Sheep uh, by uh, Philip K. Dick, who is my other favorite. He's my favorite author of fiction, and John Keel and Phil Dick were personal best friends. In the 1960s, I discovered to my astonishment that sleepers are common in the UFO phenomena. Like Candy Jones, ordinary people report being employed to carry out all kinds of missions, but have no conscious memory of those missions when they return to their normal lives. In contactee terminology, they are said to have been used. Like all contactees, such sleepers have two important characteristics. They have latent or active psychic abilities, and they are very suggestible. That is, they are easily hypnotized. Very often, I have pointed out in my various articles and books, a false memory or confabulation is planted in their minds to account for the periods during which they were being used. Again, do androids dream of electric sheep? If you've seen Blade Runner or Blade 2049, this should be not just ringing bells, but throwing off sparks. A person who has no memory of, say, 1 week returns with the vivid impression that he or she has been taken to another planet. The human mind is such that layers can be laid in the unconscious mind. The confabulation fills the uppermost layer, while memories of the sensory impressions of the actual experience are hidden in a deeper layer. An inexperienced investigator using hypnosis reaches only the surface confabulation and does not even attempt to reach the layers below. Once the amateur has brought the confabulation to the surface, the hidden layer is buried deeper than ever and becomes almost impossible to reach. Inception. You guys have watched this movie. As in conventional intelligence procedure a la Candy Jones, the sleeper must first be hypnotized or drugged into a deep trance. Subsequent trances are easily induced by a trigger. Triggers can take many forms. A sound at a specific pitch can cause the victim to lapse into a trance. Such sounds can even be transmitted by telephone. Lights flashing in a specific pattern can do the job, or even a simple word or command can be used. After Dr. Benjamin Simon first hypnotized Betty and Barney Hill, he was later able to put them into a hypnotic trance by simply saying, "Trance, Barney." Mrs. Neville often went into a spontaneous trance when she looked at herself in a mirror. I have examined contactees who were keyed to fall into a trance when they saw a certain written symbol, usually a Greek letter, or combination of Greek letters. They believed they had seen these letters painted on the side of a spacecraft. It is more probable that the letters were shown to them and they were given a post hypnotic suggestion, along with a surface confabulation of a spacecraft, and their minds blended the two. Ordinarily, a post hypnotic suggestion will wear off in a few months or, at most, a few years. Therefore, once a person has undergone a contact experience, the hypnotic episodes must be repeated periodically. This is why percipients who claim a close encounter often have repeated experiences spaced not more than 3 years apart. Unfortunately, the subsequent experiences are usually well hidden in the unconscious mind, and the witness may have no conscious memory of them. Only the initial experience, with its vivid surface confabulation, can be recalled at all by ordinary techniques. Silent contactees who suffered some form of UFO contacts years ago, even as children, can become sleepers and experience periods of temporary amnesia throughout their lives without ever relating them to their first UFO contact. The minds of some percipients are too unstable to adjust to this kind of overt tampering. In some cases, a classic conflict develops between the conscious and unconscious minds. The material hidden below the surface layers works its way through, and there is an overlap that leads to confusion, even partial insanity. Betty and Barney Hill sought out psychiatric help because they were bothered by horrible nightmares, a standard result of overlapping. Others suffer to a great degree because the material in the lower layers infiltrates the conscious mind. They become fanatics, UFO evangelists, convinced that this material is very real. Still others, like Candy Jones, find themselves battling two personalities. In innumerable cases in my UFO records, we find that the hidden material actually took over the conscious mind, causing the contactee to assume an entirely new personality and, in extreme cases, declare himself or herself to be a space person. People who make the adjustment without these problems can serve as sleepers in all kinds of ways. A mysterious phone call of beeping sounds can send them into a trance, during which they may write and mail a crank letter or carry out some other activity which they normally would not do under any circumstances. After they have performed this action, they return to normal and have no memory of it whatsoever. The frightening thing about all this is that each new UFO wave may bring more people under the hidden control of this phenomenon. We have no way of estimating how many sleepers there may be after 40 years of UFO sightings, and we have no way of finding out the triggers in use. We can say that almost every person who develops an obsession with UFOs has been subjected to some form of processing at some time in his or her life. Who or what is doing this? Is there some sinister organization plucking us off highways to hypnotize or drug us? Are invaders from outer space embarking on a worldwide campaign to brainwash us prior to landing and taking over our world? This doesn't seem too likely. This phenomenon has always existed and lies at the root of all our religious beliefs, our myths and superstitions, the ancient arts of witchcraft and black magic, and the fundamental fictions that have given us most of our social and political ideas. From the medical symptoms of the contactees, we can deduce that the phenomenon consists of an energy form rather than a solid physical structure. This energy, like a radio wave, sorry, is sometimes visible to us as glowing shapes or beams of bright light. Years ago, the intelligence community discovered ways to produce the same effects through hypnosis, drugs, and brainwashing techniques. But it is unlikely, if not altogether impossible, that any nation could or would attempt to use these methods on whole populations. Perhaps it was the CIA's studies of UFO contactees that gave them the idea and led to the creation of sleepers like Candy Jones. Chapter end. Discussion? I see there are 6 of you, 5 of you. Now that the chapter's over and the discussion is open, somebody wanted out. Like, nope, 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 don't want to be involved in that. And I'm actually good to keep reading, so I might, if there's no discussion here, about 15 seconds or fewer. Well, Rach, if you see your doppelganger, that's when you have something to be afraid of. Um, Abraham Lincoln wrote in his personal diaries that he had seen his doppelganger a few times on his way up to the theater. He wrote about seeing his doppelganger a few times in the last years of his life during his presidency. There's something there. Something there. Doppelgangers are weird. They're weird. Don't be freaked out. You have nothing to be actually freaked out about. There's no selective process, nothing you can do about it, nothing preventative you can do. But the doppelganger thing is real. And I told you this is a good book. I told you this book gets scary as fuck by the end of it. This book freaks me out too. I got cold chills. I'm shivering. I'm looking to make sure there's nothing in the camera that shouldn't be, no faces where they shouldn't be, no lights where they shouldn't be. I hear the animals moving around me, and I'm like, that's what animal noises are supposed to sound like. Told you this is spooky. It gets spooky. The first up until that chapter, you're like, oh, whatever. It's just dumb science and dumb history. And then he hits you with some genuine mysteries, some real mysteries, some really scary shit, some shit that really scares me. Bad. The memories thing. Blade Runner 2049 is my favorite movie because of the implanted memories thing. He's describing ego death. And like I tell people all the time, the reason that I don't push at you religiously, and I certainly don't push my worldview on you, is that if I did that, it would be the same ego death that he describes in that previous chapter. The same thing will happen to you. The same bad shit will happen to you. Your life will begin to test you with trials that seem to be coming from nowhere, have no cause, have no no reason to be happening to you, and it only seems obvious that it's your engagement with me. And there have been a bunch of people who were absolutely sleepers until they met me, and meeting me activated them. A bunch. It happens to me all the time. Reading this book was a major catalyst in me being this thing. One more, Eric. You're going to get it tonight, buddy. Yeah, reading this book was a major catalyst for me. Yeah, lots of sleepers. I'm not going to name them by name because they're here on YouTube. And I'm not trying to bury anybody. There were a lot of sleepers. A lot. This happens to me a lot. The thing that's happened in this last week, the reason I've walked away from the Discord, all of that stuff, I activate sleepers. Yeah. That light he's talking about, I just radiate it. Always have, my whole life. I've told my $50 Patreon subs about my personal experiences with that light and with that thing. And I've talked about it in book one, the playlist here on the channel. Um, Supernatural and religious experiences happen to me all the time, and people see it. People have supernatural experiences because of me. Um, Entities begin to act on their lives. Impossible things start to happen to test their faith, and they start getting whispers to steal from me. That's why I talk about black magic so much. That's why I talk about discipline so much. The word discipline means basically teaching. It means to be taught, to have to have somebody's teaching, like martial discipline, religious or spiritual discipline. We all need it. I need to be more disciplined. I break my own discipline all the time by losing my temper, for example. You ready? I wanna move on. Are you ready? Other realities is the title of this chapter. Parapsychologist Dr. Meade Lane was one of the first serious UFO investigators in 1947, and his Round Robin newsletter was a pioneer publication eventually imitated by hundreds of others. In those days, very few educated observers dared to enter the flying saucer controversy. Dr. Hermann Oberth of Germany and astrophysicist Morris K. Jessup of the U.S. stood almost alone. Both were enthralled with the extraterrestrial explanation, while Lane took a more unpopular position. He labeled the UFO pilots Etherians and speculated that they did not come from some other planet, but were crossing over into our reality from some other dimension or space-time continuum. It has taken ufology nearly 40 years to catch up to him. Dr. Lane witnessed the UFO's mysterious vanishing act in the early years and coined the words mat and demat for materialization and dematerialization to describe their behavior. Next to the famous falling leaf motion, this was the most frequently reported action of the strange aerial objects. Years later, photographers equipped with infrared lenses and film added to the puzzle by successfully photographing aerial objects which were not visible to the naked eye. Apparently, the disappearing act really consisted of an ability to somehow traverse the visible spectrum of light, which is very narrow, and pass from the invisible field of infrared at one extreme to the invisible area of ultraviolet at the other. It has now been well established in thousands of sightings that the UFOs emit both infrared rays, heat, and ultraviolet rays, which burn the skin and eyes. But passing across the visible spectrum is not really an interdimensional action. Ultraviolet light is radioactive, basically. It has the same effects on you as radioactivity. So when I was talking about like actinic radiation burning the eyes, high doses of ultraviolet light, I think, will do the same if memory serves. And so, if sacred places used to be flooded with ultraviolet light, and that's why they became sacred, like if the tops of these sacred mountains, like Hebron or Sinai, um, if the atmosphere used to be in such a way that the ultraviolet light from the sun up in those places would burn you worse, those would be places that only certain people who knew how to deal with it were allowed to go. And then if the atmospheric conditions changed over 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 years, and that didn't happen anymore, we would be surprised that those places were thought to do that. And we would say, "Pff." But we had a hole in the ozone layer. We humans, the planet, had a hole in the ozone layer, and we humans filled that hole. So if that can happen artificially because of human behavior, it's entirely possible in my mind that it can happen naturally sans human behavior. It's also entirely possible that the same it's entirely possible that we haven't done the digging to look, or that it hasn't been published, or that I'm unaware of it, and that the conversation doesn't include this. But it's entirely possible that we burned enough trees back then to fuck up the atmosphere, that we were burning enough shit to fuck up the atmosphere because we were smelting enough lead. The Roman civilization was smelting enough lead that lead got in the atmosphere and got trapped in the ice cores of the planet. So it's entirely possible. I have no idea whether it happened, but if I were going to search for theories, search for hypotheses for how these things that I'm suggesting might have happened, this is where I would begin. In other words, continues John Keel, UFOs are always present in the skies but can only be seen at certain times or by certain people. People with latent or active psychic abilities whose eyes are tuned to see slightly beyond the visible spectrum. Recent studies by ufologists all over the world have, in fact, found that a majority of UFO witnesses do have some psychic ability. The most exclusive group, flying saucer contactees, are very psychic. And like my saying, this is where I would start to investigate a problem. I'm doing that to show that I'm not just thinking about this idly. If I had lots of money and lots of time, this is how I would be spending my time. Just trying to answer these questions, reading this book, writing down all the mysteries, all the things that could be fact checked, all the things that could be researched, and then doing that. I'm just not going to do it for free because I don't need the answer. I don't need the answer, but you might. 13-year-old me might have. You need to see the scientific method in action by somebody who uses it as a worldview, not just a method to make a buck. Alternate reality, alternate realities. Put the emphasis on the right syllable, Vincent. A few years ago, Alan Greenfield of Atlanta, Georgia, revived Lane's findings by postulating the theory of alternate realities. He wondered if UFOs could not be coming to us from another reality very similar to our own. They had somehow figured out a system for crossing some mysterious barrier of time and space to visit us. They did not come from a distant planet, but in a sense were our next door neighbors, even though we are not fully aware of their existence. Some of the UFO contactees also spoke of time travelers and offered cryptic explanations for the UFO's wild talents. Others who had close experiences with the objects and entities did not claim direct contact, offered information which seemed to indicate that while the flying saucer occupants looked human or nearly so, they lacked free wills and were almost robot-like. When they spoke, they seemed to recite like a computer. They rarely revealed any human-like emotions, but seemed more like confused ghosts, human-like, yet very inhuman. Have you ever heard me make that comment about the people in my chat? When they spoke, they seemed to recite like a computer. Have you ever heard me say to somebody, talking to you is like talking to a not very bright AI? You just recite information like a computer. You don't seem to have any functional human use of that information. You ever heard me say that before? They rarely reveal any human like emotion, but seem more like confused ghosts. Human like, yet very inhuman. If they came from another reality like our own, it must be a very grim place. The best clue about their place of origin lies in the definitely unearthly behavior of the objects themselves. Flying saucers do not actually fly, that is, they are not supported by the air in our atmosphere. Rather, they defy, and have you ever heard me say that? Just by the way, have you ever heard me say that? That, man, wherever you live must really suck. Like the reality you live in must be really grim. Anyway, rather, these UFOs defy all our laws of motion. They levitate. They are not disturbed by turbulent air as our airplanes are, and they have often been seen making right angle turns at high speeds, demonstrating their disassociation with normal inertia and gravity forces. Of course, if they hail from another dimension or an alternate reality, their actions may be governed by an entirely different set of natural laws. The forces that bind us to Earth are not necessarily uniform throughout the universe. They probably are, though. If most UFOs are actually masses of energy with the ability to tune their frequencies, the vibrations of their atoms, up and down the electromagnetic scale, they could not only alter their color while in the visible spectrum, but they could change their sizes and shapes as well. A reddish, cigar shaped object seen at one point could become the silvery, saucer shaped object seen a few miles away. If the saucer should land and discharge a tall spectral passenger, he could actually be an integral part of the saucer itself, a robotized extension of the energy mass. The mass would possess intelligence, not the robot, and, in fact, innumerable witnesses have muttered incomprehendingly. I don't know why, but I had the feeling that the saucer itself was alive. If there is there an alternate reality populated with living masses of energy, something like intelligent lightning bolts? From seances to science. Hey, he did it, Eric. Well done, buddy. Dr. Lane's method for communicating with the Etherians was simple but unscientific. Excuse me. He spoke to them through trance mediums, and transcripts of some of these amazing seances are still available. In the 1980s, this is called channeling. As a parapsychologist, Lane was familiar with the weird phenomenon of materialization, and it occurred to him that UFOs were following the unnatural laws of psychic phenomena. Their appearances and disappearances could be equated to the materializations of ghostly entities in the seance room. Spiritualism was all the rage in the last half of the 19th century, and materializations were almost commonplace. Entities would slowly appear in dimly lit rooms and then perform physical acts, shaking hands with the sitters, even leave fingerprints in trays of wax. Then they would just as mysteriously fade into thin air. While they came in all sizes and shapes, the most common type was an Indian like figure with high cheekbones and oriental eyes. Often these characters wore some kind of metal headpiece. People are still describing such beings, except that they no longer pop up in seance rooms. They step out of glistening flying saucers. Ray Stanford, a famous psychic and the twin brother of Dr. Rex Stanford, a well known psychiatrist, claims to have been present at the materialization of such an entity. Perhaps the most famous of all the witnesses to materializations was Sir William Crookes, 1832 to 1919. As an inventor, he ranked with Edison and Einstein and developed the Crookes tube, forerunner of the X ray tube, and an important step towards the perfection of modern television. He was also one of the first men of science to become interested in psychic phenomena, and he made many important contributions to the infant science of parapsychology. I have seen, said this man, a solid self luminous body the size and nearly the shape of a turkey's egg float noiselessly about the room. I have had questions answered by the flashing of a bright light a desired number of times in front of my face. In the light, I have seen a luminous cloud hover over a heliotrope on a side table, break a sprig off, and carry the sprig to a lady. Was he describing UFOs? No, he was writing about things that had materialized in seance rooms. But his most famous experiments were his study of the mysterious Katie, a female entity who appeared no fewer than 45 times and permitted the scientist to touch her and even to give her a medical examination. She only appeared after a lady medium collapsed in a trance. Katie was taller than the medium and different in other ways. Sir William naturally explored every possibility for trickery but could find no explanation for the phenomenon. Hey, well done, Eric. In countless modern UFO cases, we have examples of mediumship. One or more of the witnesses collapses before or during the materialization of a UFO or entity. Usually, investigators regard this as a reaction to the smell, which is often terrible. Nah, man, kick ass, Eric. Or energies radiated by the object. But since these events follow the same course as comparable psychic manifestations, it is more probable that the collapse of the witness contributes directly to the UFO materialization. Parapsychologists have long suspected that the occult force needs to draw an energy from this reality. Human mediums apparently supply this energy. There are also innumerable cases in which cows, horses, dogs, and cats may have been the energy source. Barney Hill, the best known of all modern contactees, stepped into a field with a pair of binoculars to look at an aerial object. Later, he found the strap of the binoculars had been broken, but he had no memory of how it happened, probably because he was entranced. He was barely conscious throughout the interruption of his intrepid journey, but his wife, Betty, was apparently awake throughout. In the Pascagoula, Mississippi incident in 1973, Calvin Parker was unconscious while Charles Hickson was only paralyzed. Both men were allegedly hauled into a UFO and examined by neckless beings with crab like claws. Was Parker the medium in this case? If you sift through the UFO literature, you will find many comparable cases, such as the Flatwoods, West Virginia monster story of 1952. A young National Guardsman passed out in the presence of that weird creature. This need for energy could also explain why so many luminous UFOs have been seen hovering around power lines and the antennae of radio transmitters. Ivan Sanderson studied cases of this sort and wondered, are we providing a free lunch for energy forms from space? Brinsley Lepore Trunch and Gordon Creighton of England, Dr. Jacques Vallée and Aimé Michel of France, and most of the leading ufologists around the world have quietly abandoned the extraterrestrial, interplanetary theory. They now regard the alternate reality or interdimensional concept as a more valid explanation for the things that for the things that continue to haunt our skies. Several important parapsychologists, such as Dr. Jewel Eisenbud and Dr. Berthold Schwartz, have quietly entered into UFO investigations. Ideas that once seemed laughable are now being carefully considered by a generation of new ufologists. The hardware boys, those who believe the UFOs are manufactured machines from another planet, have had over 40 years in which to prove their case. It is plain that they have failed. Dr. Mead Lane's Etherians are beginning to seem more real than the Martians and Venusians of yesterday's ufology, but proving that they come from an alien space-time continuum populated by living energy will be just as difficult as proving they came from another planet with a superior technology. Earth will be a free lunch counter for a long time to come. Chapter end. We have 3 more. We have exactly 30 more pages. Do we have any further discussion? Wow, says Rach. Now you gotta remember to be skeptical about this stuff, but it's probably bullshit. We have to bear in mind that this was 1987 and the parapsychology research dried up in Obama's presidency. It's spooky. It's spooky. You heard me read today, Rach, about even Plato said that we are belongings of the gods. We are their cattle. And Keel is making the same argument. No, dinosaurs are not aliens, Eric. On top of Mount Olympus, all covered with cheese. Sorry, that's not how that song goes. On top of spaghetti, all covered with cheese, there sat my great meatball till somebody sneezed. My beautiful meatball rolled off of the table and onto the floor, and then my poor meatball rolled right out the door. I don't remember exactly how it gets there, but it rolled under a bush, and there my poor meatball turned into mush. That's one of my very favorite songs in the whole world, actually. On top of spaghetti. I genuinely love that song, and thank you for the opportunity to sing it. I'm gonna have to actually look at how that goes now. My sisters had this collection of Disney kid songs, and that was my favorite one on the CD. Are we ready for me to continue? We're so close. Looks like this face looks like a praying mantis. Kind of. Kind of. There are mantid ETs, Eric. I had a friend who had a mantid experience, actually. I do want to. I would like to. I'm feeling it tonight. I'm feeling energized to finish this one and get to the next one. On Top of Mount Olympus is the title of this chapter. The story of Antonio Villas Boas of Brazil is now very well known. In 1957, he was allegedly taken aboard a UFO. Ghosts may be aliens. And introduced to a blonde space lady with whom he had sexual intercourse. Before his X-rated adventure began, the little men on board the object pulled off his clothes and bathed him with a wet sponge. The liquid was clear as water, he later told Dr. Olivo T. Fontes, but quite thick and without smell. I thought it was some sort of oil, but was wrong, for my skin did not become greasy or oily. The Greeks and Romans believed that the gods used ambrosia as an ointment when they bathed. And many ancient, that's not true. They drank it. I don't know why he thinks that. In many ancient cultures, human sacrifices were anointed with oil before their hearts were ripped out. This practice overlapped into Christianity. Christianity's followers rubbed him with Christ's followers rubbed him with an expensive oil before he was crucified, and in fact, the very name Christ comes from Greek Christos, which means the anointed one. His real name was Yehoshua, Yeshua. The name Jesus Christ was not applied to Yehoshua until several hundred years after his death. Actually, they called him Yesu. It is intriguing that Antonio underwent the ancient anointing ceremony aboard that spaceship in Brazil. Larry Foreman of California didn't receive a cosmic bath, but during a series of UFO contacts near Socorro, New Mexico in the 1960s, he claims to have tasted ambrosia. To him, it was some kind of punch, berry of some kind, I think. Foreman's story includes stone walls that weren't there and a variety of obvious hallucinations common to the victims of enchantment. In May 1969, a Brazilian soldier named Jose Antonio underwent a remarkable experience when he was kidnapped by a group of tiny humanoids and transported to a cavern-like room of stone. There, his captors offered him a drink from a stone cube with a pyramid-shaped cavity in the center. It was a dark green liquid with a bitter taste, but he said he felt better after drinking it. Woodrow Derenberger, a contactee in West Virginia, also felt better after he drank a liquid given to him by an alleged UFOnaut in 1967. Derenberger had been suffering from a stomach ailment, and he claimed the outer space potion cleared it up. He was involved in the Mothman stuff. Can these things be? Those who guzzled ambrosia on Mount Olympus were supposed to have enjoyed increased intelligence and heightened perceptions afterwards. In the modern UFO cases, many of the percipients have undergone dramatic changes after their initial contact experience. Their IQ increases, they develop psychic abilities, and they acquire very suddenly new knowledge of science, astronomy, and ontology. Others, unfortunately, deteriorate instead. They become nervous wrecks, divorce their wives, lose their jobs, go bankrupt, and have a very hard time. But the ancient gods had a nasty reputation for causing the same kind of havoc in the lives of those who were privileged to meet them. I promise you. I've already talked about it tonight. That's what's happening here. Could it be that the modern UFO phenomenon? I had a UFO experience to start all this, by the way, guys. When I started trying to become a podcaster, very shortly after I recorded my first ever podcast, I had a UFO experience. Very shortly after. Could it be that the modern UFO phenomenon is nothing more than an updated version of these ancient games, and I was convinced after that the UFO was trying to tell me not to do what I was doing? Convinced. I am convinced that if I go back to working on Rob, this shit is going to start happening to me again. The gods of old were accepted as residents of this planet. It is unnecessary to assume they are visitors from some far off planet. They have always been right here, manipulating us, muddling our lives, festering our beliefs in spiritual and supernatural matters. The rites of many modern religions are nothing more than slightly modified versions of the rites of the ancient Druids and other cults which dealt directly with the gods. Fact. The fairies of the Middle Ages were also regarded as residents of Earth. One popular belief was that they lived under the seas. We are forced to base our speculations about the phenomenon on the testimony of scattered witnesses who, no matter how sincere and truthful they might be, are seeing only what they are supposed to see and remembering only what they are supposed to remember. Their trips to other worlds may be trips of another kind altogether, produced by sips of ambrosia rather than the roaring rockets of some advanced extraterrestrial civilization. Allow me, before he does, to tell you what the anthropologists think ambrosia was. They think it was an LSA or LSD laced cocktail. Maybe, maybe it had psychotropic mushrooms, but probably not because Greece doesn't have any of those native to it. But it does have ergot native to it. And you can very easily, if you know what you're doing, access the LSA compound in ergot. Because that's definitely what soma was. Not ergot, that was probably psilocybin mushrooms. But that's definitely what soma was. Moving on. The ambrosia factor. When mortal men were ushered into the presence of the gods in ancient times, the idea was that the gods drank ambrosia because that was just, that it didn't get them high. The LSA experience was their state of consciousness. Anyway, when mortal men were ushered into the presence of the gods in ancient times, according to mythology, they were invariably handed a goblet containing a thick, syrupy liquid and were told to drink it. Fact. If they were suffering any ill effects from their visits to the palaces of gods, usually on top of some mountain, their symptoms vanished as soon as they drank from the goblet. So the first legend to spring up around this ambrosia claimed that it had medicinal powers, that it was a magical cure-all. Later, this was greatly embellished. Fact, because when you're tripping on LSA, you can feel what's wrong with your body, and you can tell a doctor exactly what's wrong. Ambrosia was supposed to make the drinker immortal, and it rendered divine powers, the ability to communicate directly with the gods. But remember what Plato said today when we read the Phaedo. Remember what he said that the mysteries said about those drinks. He's closer because the mysteries were still around in his day. The good anthropology on the mystery cults of people like Brian C. Murarescu wasn't done in 87. I'm pretty sure that the Immortality Key was published in 18 or 19, 2018 or 2019. So he doesn't have good anthropology on this. And we know John Keel hasn't read his Plato. But what did he say about the mysteries and their brew and their preparation for death? That it would make you immortal. And what does he say here? Later, their claims were greatly embellished. Ambrosia was supposed to make the drinker immortal, because that was what they drank in the mystery cults, and it rendered divine powers, like Plato has Socrates' claim of the mystery cults, the ability to communicate directly with the gods, like Plato has Socrates claiming. We know that John Keel hasn't read his Plato. We know that. Continuing. Even though belief in the gods of the Romans and Greeks gradually faded away, the ambrosia factor remained an integral part of supernatural manifestations. In the Middle Ages, that's right, even though people stopped reading the Phaedo, the things in the Phaedo that the mystery cults were doing remained a part of supernatural experiences with uninitiated, uneducated people who had no way of knowing. He's right about this. In the Middle Ages, most of Europe was engulfed in an epidemic of fairies and little people. Fact. Millions saw the diminutive creatures, and thousands even claimed to have been kidnapped and taken into their underground palaces. Fact. Some men even returned with bizarre tales of having been forced to mate with the fairy queen, presumably to introduce a human strain into the fairy world. Fact. As in more ancient times, those selected for these palace visits were plied with food and drink. Fact. Especially drink. Fact. A thick, sweet substance identical apparently to the ambrosia of the old-time gods of the mountaintops. I went and looked. I spent years after reading this book listening to every modern supernatural account that I could find. And this still happens. The drink and food thing still happens. Listen to me. Listen to me. The first rule of a supernatural encounter is refuse all food and drink. Refuse it. All food and drink. It was a recurring theme in fairy lore. A recurring theme that after you had eaten your fill, it would turn out to be rotten or dirt or bugs or something else completely repulsive. The first rule is do not accept the food and drink. Do not accept it. Say no thank you. Be polite, but do not accept it. Your life is in danger. Continuing. Scholars, historians, and priests who investigated the fairy manifestations eventually decided that the little people did not really exist. The witnesses, they speculated, had been enchanted by some mysterious force. Nothing was known about hypnotism in those days, and even less was known about hallucinogenic drugs. But the voluminous descriptions of these fairy episodes clearly indicate that the victims were exposed to one or both. This is real. I'm reading another book that I can't reach right now about people who came to life from the dead. And I just finished another academic book, all of these published, both of these books I'm describing, published since this book, describing people who encountered the god of death. This is real shit he's talking about. When he talks about historians and people wrote and people talked about and accounts were kept and the Catholic Church really investigated this shit, he's not wrong. He's not making this up. They did not know, as he says, they didn't know anything about hypnotism. They didn't know anything about hallucinogenic drugs. They didn't know. They did not know. But they wrote good accounts because they knew the future would. And they were right. And we're only now going back and reading it, knowing what we know, looking for what they didn't. Only recently, within the last couple of decades. I'm very serious about this. But the voluminous descriptions of these fairy episodes clearly indicate that the victims were exposed to one or both hallucinogenic drugs or hypnotism. And this is the hallucinogenic drugs is a modern theory. The fluids forced down their throats may have been a forerunner of LSA, opening their minds to complex hallucinations and clouding their memories of what really happened. LSA will do that to you. It's not as intense visually, but it'll fuck up everything else for you if you're not strong enough and you don't know it's what you're drinking. It was not uncommon for an enchanted man to stagger home like Rip Van Winkle, thinking only a few hours had passed, but finding that several days, even weeks, had elapsed since he had entered the fairy domain. This is a thing that the Dionysian cult would do to men too. It's why the Romans hunted them down and killed them, because they would brainwash people, program them, put them to sleep, and then put them in government. This happened in Rome. There's documentation of it. It happened. They hunted these women down and murdered them brutally. The Christians got caught up in it. This happened. This compression of time is a sure sign that the victims had been hypnotized in some way and had a completely false memory inserted into their minds to account for the period in which their bodies had somehow been used by the enchanting force. It could be a form of possession, the occupation of the human body by an outside intelligence. And that's what the Catholic Church believed. That's what they believed. That's how they lived. They lived like it was the possession of extra human intelligences. Continuing. The fairy faith died out after 1848 and the introduction of spiritualism. Fact. Spirit mediums lapse into an unconscious state and willingly turn their bodies over to forces professing to be the spirits of the dead. The rapid spread of spiritualism made the old fairy game unnecessary. The enchanting force now had a growing army of willing victims. Venusian booze. that willing victim thing, when you hear about free will sacrifice, when you hear about willingly going to the gods in Scandinavian and otherwise pre Christian or otherwise Christian religion, willing, that willing thing. That's why Jews refused it. We talked about this today. Venusian booze. During the 1930s, a Polish emigre named George Adamski was set up shop in California as a teacher of universal truths and mysticism. He served as the guru to a small following of a few hundred people and would have remained totally obscure in a state filled with countless obscure cults if flying saucers had not suddenly appeared in 1947. Soon, strange aerial objects were appearing nightly over Adamski's home on the slopes of Mount Palomar. Adamski was already steeped in the lore and practices of self-hypnosis, spiritualism, and the esoteric religions of the Far East. His mind was already trained to accept cosmic interlopers. He embraced the UFO mystery with enthusiasm. Within a few days, huge, cigar-shaped objects were landing on the desert near Mount Palomar, and tall, long-haired Venusians, Venus, were holding face-to-face meetings with the aged guru. Excuse me, aging guru. Modesty not being one of Adamski's virtues, he gleefully told his followers about his experience, and soon his story was appearing in newspapers and magazines. Adamski's new friends were quite obliging. They invited him aboard their craft and flew him to the moon. But, of course, before they whisked him into outer space, they offered him a drink. One of the beautiful Venusian women on the spacecraft handed him a small glass of colorless liquid. It tasted like water, he later wrote, but was a little denser, with a consistency something like a very thin oil. Since he was one of the first UFO contactees to publicize his alleged experiences, Adamski quickly became the center of controversy. Don't drink it. The self-styled scientific ufologists, who then were few in number, and still are, frothed at the mouth each time his name appeared in print. He was denounced as a liar and a fraud, despite the fact that he produced photographs to back up his story, and, on a number of occasions, other witnesses were present when he met with the saucer pilots. He was taken more seriously in Europe, where he traveled in the late 1950s, and was accorded meetings with various luminaries and a private audience with the Pope. In 1965, he was stricken with a heart attack and died penniless. Route to the stars. Throughout the 1950s, the flying saucers endlessly repeated the well-known fairy games of old, frequently pausing to pail water from streams and wells in front of astonished witnesses, an old fairy fact, actually, and indulging in the kind of mischievous pranks which had led the American Indians to label the little people tricksters. Indians were seeing the wee folk long before the Europeans arrived on this continent, also fact. More and more UFO contactees bravely followed Adamski's example and revealed their experiences publicly, often to their everlasting regret, because they were usually ridiculed and harassed into silence. Ugh. A sign painter, sorry, let's start that over. A sign painter in New Jersey, Howard Menger, claimed that UFOs were landing on his farm, and on one occasion he met a tall entity in a suit of shining armor who sounded exactly like one of the ancient Greek or Roman gods. In another age, Adamski and Menger would have probably been elevated to the rank of high priest, and their tales of these encounters would have been carved into stone. But in these enlightened times, the general public viewed the contactees as clowns and lunatics, while the believers in UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligences snarled that they were hoaxers and publicity-seeking charlatans. This is why I can't be rich. This is why I can't get famous. As more and more contactee stories appeared, a number of interesting facts and similarities developed. It was especially common for the contact experience to begin with a sudden, almost blinding flash of light, Then the objects or entity would materialize in front of the startled recipient. This same factor was present in many of the fairy stories and in many religious miracles. It's true. That's true. That doesn't mean that the later stories didn't know about the earlier stories. Often the recipient would find himself rooted to the spot, unable to move. This is a clear indication that he or she was in a trance state after the light flashed. After the object departed, the recipient would cease to be paralyzed and would discover that several hours had passed, even though it had seemed like only a few minutes. Adamski and Menger both sincerely believed they had been aboard a spaceship and had even flown to the moon. But were the memories of their experiences any more reliable than the memories of the men who had been seduced by the fairy queen in her underground palace? What the witnesses see is not nearly as important as what made them see it. The strangling spacemen. Descriptions of the ufonauts have been varied, from little men a few inches high to towering giants. But one type is turned up more often than any other. He is of normal height, 5 to 6 feet tall, and resembles a normal earthling except that his facial features are quite angular. Often he appears to the witness to be of Oriental extraction, with elongated eyes, high cheekbones, and a dark complexion. One of the most ignored aspects of these contact cases is probably also one of the most important. This description fucks me up because my girlfriend that I had at the time I was reading this book, she just goes, John Keel's a racist. But this, often he appears to the witness to be of Oriental extraction, with elongated eyes, high cheekbones, and a dark complexion. He looks like the he is describing what he is describing is what the Native Americans would have looked like before they crossed the Bering Strait. What he is describing is Siberian people. That's weird. He's describing what the Denisovans, the Homo Denisovans, might have looked like. But we only know they exist because of a knuckle bone. We don't know what they look like. But we know that the human beings that intermarried with them have those cock eyes. That's a weird detail that I've only ever found in John Keel. The tall, slant-eyed Orientals. Oriental means Asian. That's weird. That's a weird detail. And they didn't have the anti-Muslim, anti-Oriental bias in 87 that we had after 2001. It is curious. There are characters like this he describes all over the Mothman prophecies. It's a weird detail, and it's consistent only to Keel. It's weird. And it might be consistent only to Keel because people kept getting it after Keel, and we were at war in the Middle East after that. And so the authors who were getting this went, okay, well, I can't describe them as vaguely Middle Eastern. But what he's describing here, high cheekbones, elongated eyes, dark complected, that's Siberians. That's weird. It's just weird. And it takes me a while to move past it. Because it's consistent. John Keel is consistent with it. But he's the only one. I don't know. I don't know, Rach. It doesn't make sense. You know where Siberia is. Like, the only place more isolated in the world than Gina right now is Siberia. But Siberia is also where shamanism and the psychedelic cult began. It's weird. It's just a weird series of meta connections that he's not making, that are there to be made. And so I have to be careful. I have to be careful with my biases, with the connections I am making. I have to be very careful. I'm glad you're happy, Eric. I'm going to continue now. One of the most ignored aspects of these contact cases is probably also one of the most important. These strange beings have trouble breathing. They seem to be gasping for air when they speak, as if they were suffering from asthma. Their faces turn red with the effort. When they move, they stagger uncertainly, almost as if they were drunk. They have trouble putting one foot in front of the other. Their eyes don't seem to focus. Sometimes they look right through or right past the witness, or one eye seems out of sync with the other. When they talk, the words come out in clipped phrases between gasps, as if they were reciting something they had memorized. This is oxygen depth. They're not getting enough oxygen. So if they're time travelers, they're traveling back to a time in Earth's history when we don't have as much oxygen, or they're traveling forward to a time where we don't have as much oxygen. I don't know what the oxygen content was when the Denisovans went extinct, something like 15,000 years ago, very recently. Yeah, Rach, they're acting like they have altitude sickness, but he's not describing them being at high altitude. Like West Virginia's not at low altitude. But they would have to be from sea level, unless the sea level is lower, because the water in the planet is frozen. Yeah, it's insane, Rach, because it could all be made up, but it all makes so much sense. It starts to really connect. Things start to click in place that shouldn't. In short, these mysterious visitors, continues John Keel, show all the symptoms of a well known medical ailment called aeroembolism, also called the bends. And he's describing coming up from great depth, which is where you were coming from. Are they coming out of the inside of the planet? Are they coming from the bottom of the oceans? That's what he's trying to bring us to, is that they're from the bottom of the ocean. But you would think if they're getting if they're getting nitrogen bubbles in their blood from coming up to altitude too fast, you'd think they'd know that and they'd know how to deal with it. General Marshall's statement in 1955, Dr. Rolf Alexander, a prominent British ufologist, had a remarkable conversation with his old friend General George C. Marshall. General Marshall was one of the top men in government in the 1940s, serving as Army Chief of Staff. According to Dr. Alexander, Marshall told him, quote, "Visitors from outer space are trying to work out a method of breathing and staying alive in our atmosphere before landing and establishing contact," end quote. Apparently, the general was privy to detailed, secret reports containing information of such a bizarre nature that even when this same sort of information became available to ufologists in the 1960s, they chose to ignore it. When a British contactee named Arthur Bryant described his first encounter with UFO pilots in 1965, he said, quote, "When I first saw them, their breathing was labored, but after some minutes, that seemed to wear off," end quote. This labored breathing is a common factor in many contact cases and in many Men in Black episodes as well. During my UFO investigations around the country, I have collected many interesting stories, which I have never published. usually because the witnesses refused to let me use their names in print. But here are some documented accounts from my personal files. Quote, they had an odd manner of speaking, as though they would inhale, then speak until they had exhaled all their breath, then inhale again and and inhale again and begin to speak again. End quote. From a deputy police officer's description of his encounter with three mysterious men in black suits in 1968. I'm not going to do the open end quote thing. He seemed to wheeze, like a man with asthma. He appeared to have difficulty breathing. One of his eyes appeared to have a cast like a glass eye. His eyes did not seem to move in unison. Testimony of a family in Cape May, New Jersey, describing a mysterious visitor who appeared shortly after they had experienced some unusual UFO sightings in 1966. In 1967, a young family man from Belpre, Ohio, had some interesting sightings. Shortly after, he had a brief encounter with two black garbed Oriental looking men. He said they appeared confused or drunk and seemed to have difficulty walking. In the spring of 1968, an Indian in black clothes appeared in the middle of the night on a college campus in Minnesota following a series of UFO sightings. He behaved in a drunken fashion. The witnesses were interviewed by Jerome Clark, well-known American ufologist. In 1969, a drunken Chinaman staggered into a newspaper office in New York State while a reporter was typing up a local UFO report. He was dressed in a black suit. After much wheezing, he managed to say, "Don't print that story." He staggered out, bumping into furniture. The reporter followed after him immediately, but the street outside was completely deserted. In the fall of 1969, an astonished motorist in Massachusetts found the road blocked by a large saucer. A red faced man with popping eyes came up to his car and asked the witness to drive him into the nearest town. The man wore a short black coat and very shiny green trousers made out of some material I have never seen before. As soon as the man got into the car, the object on the road lifted silently into the air and vanished. The witness tried to talk to the person, but he seemed to have a great difficulty breathing. When asked where he was from, he replied, "You wouldn't understand." The driver was thinking of going straight to the local police station as soon as he let the man out. But when the person got out of the car on the main street of the town, he wheezed, "Nobody is going to believe you, so don't bother." He appeared to stagger uncertainly as he moved away. Too much nitrogen. What ails these strange black-suited people? Apparently, our atmosphere is getting to them. At sea level, the Earth's atmosphere is approximately 80% nitrogen and 20% oxygen. Aeroembolism, also called caisson disease, is caused by bubbles of nitrogen. According to the Merck Manual, a reference book for doctors, and decompression from greater than atmospheric pressure, localized sharp pains in the abdomen or about the joints of the extremities, the bends, vertigo, the staggers, nystagmus. I heard that, Calvin. Welcome back, though. I'm great, bud. How are you? Vertigo, the staggers, nystagmus, oscillatory movement of the eyeballs, tinnitus, subjective roaring or hissing in the ears, may be present. Apparently, these entities are like deep sea divers who come up too fast. When they step into our atmosphere, their bodies are suddenly attacked by nitrogen and they suffer from vertigo and nystagmus. In a number of cases, such as the Cape May incident above, these beings asked for a glass of water so they could take a pill. After swallowing the pill, their behavior became more normal. Noxious gases play a role in many UFO reports. The objects and sometimes the entities are often surrounded by the smell of rotten eggs. Chemists identify this as being the smell of hydrogen sulfide. In a few cases, the witnesses have been deliberately gassed before the ufonauts made their entrance. The best known incident of this type is the previously discussed story of Antonio Villas Boas, the young Brazilian farmer who, in 1957, went aboard a UFO and had a sexual liaison with a blonde, long fingered female. Before the girl showed up, he said, a nauseating gas that smelled like burning oilcloth filled the chamber where he was waiting. It made him ill, and he threw up before he adjusted to it. Could he have been exposed to the normal atmosphere of these people? God and gases. Were the gods of the ancient peoples actually euphonauts playing strange games? Description of the ancient gods matched the modern euphanaut descriptions, and this apparent problem with aeroembolism may explain why the gods always chose to settle on mountaintops. They seemed to prefer places where the air was thinner and, possibly, the risk of aeroembolism was not so great. In many parts of the world, people still believe they are gods. There are gods in the mountains, from the Andes in South America to Tibet. The Paiute Indians in North America have legends about blonde, long haired, long fingered gods who lived on sacred plateau. And here's the thing, the Denisovans did that too, and had that hair color. Indians who wandered into these areas were paralyzed by metal tubes wielded by these gods. The Hopi and Navajo think their gods, the Kachina people, ride around in luminous aerial objects and reside in the San Francisco mountains. When that fiery cloud visited Moses, it settled atop Sinai, and Moses struggled to the summit alone to spend 40 days there. In earlier times, the smell of brimstone, sulfur, was associated with the appearances of these strange airborne phantasms and the demons and gods who supposedly accompanied them. So the modern sightings and smells are nothing new. Questions of origin. There are many reports describing euphonauts seen wearing helmets or breathing apparatus of some kind. These stories cover everything from a simple tube running up the euphonauts' nose to elaborate space helmets attached to tanks worn on the back. There are at least 2 photographs of helmeted euphonauts. One was filmed by an engineer named Monguzzi in the mountains of Italy in 1952. Unfortunately for Mr. Monguzzi, his pictures were too clear. He was accused of a hoax and even lost his job after he released the pictures. The other was taken by a fireman in England in the 1960s. He snapped a picture of his daughter in a park near an atomic laboratory, and when the film was developed, there was the image of a tall man in a white spacesuit with a helmet of some sort on his head, a man no one had seen at the time the picture was taken. If these photos are authentic, and there will always be doubts about that, they clinch the argument that some euphonauts need artificial aids in our atmosphere. If sulfur and hydrogen sulfide are important components of their atmosphere, where could they come from? Methane gas, good old swamp gas, seems to be the main gas in the atmosphere of Jupiter. Perhaps the only place in our solar system rich in hydrogen sulfide is the center of the Earth itself. And if anybody was walking around down there, they're under very high pressure. If they came up to the surface abruptly, they would get the bends just like a deep sea diver. Since 1944, there has been a large group of people who actually believe that flying saucers and euphonauts do come from the center of the Earth. There are even people who claim to have visited the deep caverns populated by these mysterious beings who look very much like us, except for the oriental cast to their features. King of the world. There are countless myths about the elder race who once populated this earth but were driven underground by some catastrophe. In the Orient, there still exist beliefs in this underground race, ruled over by the king of the world. It is even said that this race controls human events on the surface, and that various surface cults take orders from this hidden race, committing political assassinations and other crimes to further the elders' mysterious ends. A writer named Richard Shaver gave the elders a new name in 1944 when he updated the ancient legends. He called them Daros, acronym for detrimental robots, and claimed they controlled us through the use of fiendish rays. I told you he was referencing the Shaver Mysteries. Richard Shaver is the author of the Shaver Mysteries. According to the Darrow believers, the flying saucers come to us from gigantic holes at the North and South Poles. But perhaps we should take a new look at the old legends. It does seem to be a fact that a godlike race of superior beings existed alongside early man. Who were they? Where were they from? Where did they go? Did they go underground into the volcanic interior of the earth, leaving only a dim racial memory behind? Are they still there, breathing sulfuric fumes, rising from their dark dominion from time to time, to stagger down our streets on unsure feet, eyes rolling, bodies tortured with arrow embolism? End chapter. We have 2 more chapters, and I can't tonight. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm losing focus. But I fucking told you. I fucking told you he was going to get to the Shaver Mysteries. And he was going to play the Shaver Mysteries like they happened, like they were real. And the Shaver Mysteries would be perfect for Spoopyween. The Shaver Mysteries would be perfect. Would be a perfect read for Spoopyween. Contextually and just what they are. They would be perfect. My Rob Longshore work is channeled. Automatically written. I go into a trance state and Rob speaks into my pen, through my body. I love this book. A lot of it is wrong, but the stuff that's wrong has absolutely nothing to do with his thesis. The stuff that's wrong about this book has nothing to do with the thesis. He's trying to do a work of synthesis. And the stuff he's wrong about, he can be wrong about, and it has nothing to do with the synthesis, because the stuff he's right about, he's really right about. Really right. And he's not trying to be an academic. He's not trying to be right. I love this book. Deep, deep admiration for Keel as an author, but as a thinker. This is 87. We have to remember that this is 1987. The internet does not meaningfully exist, if it exists at all. The research that he has done, the reading, the effort, the interviewing, you got to remember, this is a guy who spends his time. Yeah, it doesn't feel like 1987 when he's writing that. Yeah. It's because he's synthesizing a lot of science that was not available to a lot of people in the 80s. He's doing a very good job. He's very wrong about his anthropology and his archaeology, but that shit was up in the air in the 80s. It has only been very recently that we have made conclusive proofs of who built the pyramids, when, and for what reason. Only very recently. Archaeology and anthropology were bullshit sciences before 2008. I'm serious. Bullshit sciences. Legacy positions is what they were. Legacy jobs within universities. Utter bullshit. Now, that's not the case. It's no longer the case. But it was an utter bullshit industry, intelligence industry. No longer the case. For example, I went and I did go and look. I said, we could just do this. We could research it. The island he was talking about in Micronesia that has the giant structures on it that they're not sure that in the 80s he was saying they weren't sure how they were built. It was a mystery in the 80s how they were built. It was. It's only very recently that we figured this stuff out. And Nan Madol, Nan space Madol, is the site he was talking about. And we know it's no longer a mystery. It's awesome, but it's not a mystery. We know. And that was depopulated because of famine. What I said while I was reading it is that it was probably depopulated because of famine. They ran out of food. That's what happened. That's why when I was talking to my guy earlier today, from Scotland, and he was worried about the government was saying that Russia was going to attack. What's more likely is that the tariffs from the United States have shut off their food supply. Mm-hmm. Easter Island is not the mystery they want us to believe. We have a really good idea how and why. They ran out of food. Yeah. Yeah. The Easter Island heads, the builders of those, the reason they stopped was because they ran out of food. We found their last settlement where the people who chose to stay starved. Hmm. We found the cave. We know what happened. We know what happened. It's sad. These alternate historians, they just don't want to believe the saddest possible thing happened. Yeah. They cut down all the trees. Yeah. These UFO people, these alternate historians, they don't want to believe that climate change is man-made. They don't want to believe the ecological disaster can be man-made. But these civilizations that left beautiful ruins, and we go, wow, their technology was so amazing. They starved. They starved to death. That's what happened to them. The Maya, their genetics still exist in Mexico, Mesoamerica. The reason the Mayan civilization ended had nothing to do with North America or with Europeans. It had everything to do with they ran out of food. The weather changed, and they could no longer grow food in the patterns they were used to because it stopped raining for years. And they just died. They just died. That's what happened. They died. It sucks. But they died. And then people came in and lived in their ruins or lived nearby their ruins, and they told their children not to go there because the ghost of that people still lived there because they didn't want their kids to figure it out. They didn't want their kids to figure out that living here could equal starvation. Because you'd never hear the end of it. You'd never get them to go to bed. Yeah. And that breaking of your heart, specifically, Rach, is why anthropologists don't talk about it. They just pretend it's a mystery. But it's not a mystery. They died. That's what happened. There was no rapture. There were no gods. They starved. Or they just left. And that's the other thing that modern people don't like to imagine, is just leaving. Like if tomorrow New York City had no food and was going to get no food, we're talking about 95% of the population just leaving. And then you have a cascading problem. And that happened a lot in the ancient world. That cascading problem happened a lot. It happened every few years, somewhere. It's what happened to the Sumerian-speaking Sumerians. It can happen again if we're not careful. Yeah. If we're stupid, if we're as stupid as we were heading into 2008 about our food again, it will happen again. That's why when Kathos was telling me that truck drivers are the real heroes of the economy, it's like the people making your food are the reason you don't starve. Forget the truck drivers. History repeats in that ecological disaster equals disaster. But that's what the Sacred King was responsible for doing. Making sure that ecological disaster doesn't happen. So that we're not talking about abandoning our cities. This is where religion began. Religion began at making sure we didn't destroy our environment. And so, not for nothing, but it's not a coincidence that in addition to these other things that euphonauts, that is, the entities that emerge from UFOs, talk about, the thing they seem most concerned about in the way back times was the coming ecological disaster of the 90s. The UFO contactees no longer talk about ecological disaster because it's not coming. Nuclear holocaust is no longer on the horizon. So do they have nothing to warn us against? Possible. Suddenly crazy warm. Like way overheated warm. Hmm. Thank you for your kind words, Rach. I'm not ignoring your effusive praise. But the shaver mysteries are the whole thing where they can beam you with what looks like a flashlight and control your mind with it. It looks like a Those long, stainless steel tube flashlights. I appreciate you letting me know. Yeah, we'll read the Shaver Mysteries for the channel someday because I want to read them, and I have no reason to read them for myself. I won't. We'll get into it. I'll give you the brief though. Shaver, like shave. Um, he was unwell. He was seriously mentally unwell. Either PTSD or bipolar and schizophrenia. He was very unwell, but he wrote a series of novels with the help of a producer, and that producer ended up ran away with all the money and women. Um, but the Shaver Mysteries were produced as a result, and so he had these Darrow and all these other different uh, things, so the good ones and the bad ones, and it's science fiction. But he was of the opinion that it was very real. Shaver was of the opinion that it was real. Obviously, the publisher, tried to argue that the publisher had added enough to it. It was real to him, and then it became a thing that the publisher and Shaver started to argue over what uh, what the publisher added to it to make it not real, and it's off the rails. It's off the rails. It's science fiction. It was published in those old magazines like astonishing stories or whatever, amazing stories or whatever. um but it was real to Shaver. It was totally off the rails. It got completely off the rails outside the novels. I've listened to a lot of people biography that because it's an interesting story, and so I'm not going to do that. I'm not that guy. But I've wanted to read the mysteries for a while. Like they blew up. Those magazines sold like Spider-Man comics. Gangbusters. Everybody read it. Everybody read it. But like Spider-Man, nobody was proud to have said that they read it. Yeah. Well, if the Fallout 76 leans into like the Mothman and all these monsters, you probably are getting like Astonishing Monthly or whatever because it was a big deal in West Virginia back then. Rural parts of the country read that stuff like gangbusters, man. It sold like Spider-Man comics. Crazy, crazy numbers of issues. But nobody would admit to having read it. Kind of, kind of, kind of. Astonishing Tales. Yeah. Kind of like what happened with 50 Shades of Grey. Everybody bought it, but nobody would admit to having read it. The Shaver Mysteries were like that. I've been trying to remember this whole time. I've been trying to remember what it was called, but there's a series of books published like that that became Stranger Things, but I can't remember the name of that mystery. But like the broad strokes of Stranger Things is another UFO story. And I'm not of the opinion that that one is 100% false. The author, the guy that went public about it, seriously mentally unwell. Seriously mentally unwell and possibly below average intelligence. But there's some overlap with my own life and his story that I think is real. I think it's, but I'm seriously unwell. You gotta understand, I'm very unwell. I am insane. I am unwell. Definitely, I suffer from bipolar too. Definitely, and schizophrenia would be genetic. I've never been diagnosed, but I've never sought a diagnosis. And my therapist, um, she couldn't evaluate me for for schizophrenia if I had wanted to submit myself to her evaluation for schizophrenia in the first place. Schizophrenia is a perspective disorder, and I tell you all the time that thought I'm having is paranoid, so I'm not going to act on it, and that's a perspective issue. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm healthy and I'm sane. And how can you tell if your therapist is a sociopath? By talking to her. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that all of this stuff is real. I'm not going to tell you that I'm not going to tell you that the fairy stories, which were real, and the accounts of them were real, and they took it very seriously. I'm not going to tell you that they weren't superstition and that they weren't something else, some other thing than what they claimed to be. I'm not going to tell you that they weren't, but I'm going to insist that the data acquisition happened and that they came to the conclusions that they came to because of what they had experienced. Lucas just came and got his nuts and left. I gave him a Brazil nut for you, Rach. I only had one Brazil nut in the bag, so I gave it to Lucas. I thought you would approve. He came in, got his tribute, left. I love you, Eric. Yes, you don't have to believe. You don't. But I have seen and experienced inexplicable things. I have seen money materialize and dematerialize in ways that it just can't. So thanks. I need to pee. And just between you and me, I'm afraid to open my door. I'm legitimately afraid. Like, I'm going to open my door and there's just going to be a fucking alien standing right there. You're ecstatic? Oh, because you got your 120. I'm so proud of you, buddy. Nothing's going to happen. I'm just spooked out because we did something spooky. And I've been talking about spooky, weird shit. And I'm going to turn off my camera and my microphone so I can pee. And that would be the time. That would be when it would happen. I love that, Eric. Thank you, buddy. You're great. And you're still freaked out about the doppelganger? Well, you haven't seen your doppelganger. So you're good. Now, if there were a supernatural experience, 3D Yoshi, that's cool. No, if something supernatural were happen right now, I wouldn't be able to hear the Home Depot's radio. It would be silent. Okay, give me just a second. But anyway, I have the permission to be here. Uh, Black Liger, my experience with supernatural is perfect silence. Total unnatural silence. Even the crickets are afraid. I mean, they are very rarely hostile. I've never heard of a hostile encounter. The what usually what you get is an unhuman, dispassionate uh, disinterest, like the way we treat animals. And so part of me thinks that what's happening in contactee experiences is people who are very sensitive emotionally and no, not deafening silence, just perfect silence, unnatural silence. You're just like, it's not possible to be this quiet. Like during mine, all I could hear was myself going fuck, 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 fuck. That's all I heard. That's all I could hear. That's all I can remember hearing. Not even the sound of my own breathing. Just the I pee super fast. I get it done. I don't even remember hearing my feet hit the pavement. I can remember not being able to hear my breath as I just stared at it, but I could hear myself speaking. And the most uncanny part of it all is I can remember that I was listening to a song in my earbuds. I was listening to music or an audiobook. And I can almost always remember what book or music I was listening to. And I can't remember what was in my earbuds. I don't even remember I don't even remember having them in, but I know I didn't take them out. It was a very weird experience. Just the way my memory of it worked. And the missing time thing. I was very careful. to get good timestamps. Yeah, Rach. That's that was frightening. I'm happy you're happy, Eric. I'm happy that you found a way to be immune to Spoopyween too, buddy. Not really. I got overwarm earlier, Eric. No, I'm not. I'm not cold. Ugh, I have enough gear in this setup that I'm warm. Is it time? What time is it? Fuck, guys, it's 3 in the morning. Huh, we did it. Actually, we made it past the scary part of the night. Uh, without anything too weird and scary. Just the mouse. Lucas, be cool. You be cool, you fucker. You be cool. My my tootsies are actually in socks. Eric, I'm good, man. I offended Lucas though. I rubbed his little belly through the blanket. He fucked off. He didn't like that. Probably, James. Probably there is. Not today, bears. Yeah, I offended all of his sensibilities. He left, and I don't think he's coming back. Yeah, thank you guys for being a part of it, Rach. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be uniquely me. Yeah, you too, Calvin. Thanks for coming by, man. There will not be a schedule one tomorrow, by the way. There's nothing actually to be afraid of, Rach. Just think about it. Like, if I can sleep in this, you don't have anything to be afraid of. I know you are, Eric. Yeah, it's only going to get better. I know, Rach. That has me thinking of the line from Naked Gun where Liam Neeson says, "You don't want to kill somebody. The first time you take a life, it changes you forever. You think to yourself, that was awesome." uh, you don't want to kill him, he says to Pamela Anderson, because you'll think to yourself, that was awesome. He bites that fucking guy's gun. Right? there's there's an interview. He did a promo interview where a guy goes, "So I heard you bit off a guy's gun in the movie. What did that taste like?" And Liam looks right at him and goes, "You're sick." uh he played all the promo interviews. He played all the promo interviews like in character, and you could tell that the interviews didn't get it, and so Pamela was pretending like she didn't get it. It's very funny. His Some of the interviews he did are very funny for that character. You're sick is how he answers the guy about biting off a guy's gun. Between Two Ferns, the Zach Galifianakis vehicle, Eric. I've seen clips. I've seen clips from the show. I haven't watched full episodes. The premise of the comedy, makes me uncomfortable, but it's very funny. Spit gum right in his face. That's funny. The actors like Obama's visit when Barack Obama did Between Two Ferns. The the actors who got the joke, the people who got the joke and leaned into it were funny to me. Like um the guy from Clueless. Um Damn, what is his name? My hair is doing its thing. It's doing that thing it does where it stands straight up. Uh, yeah, Brad Pitt leaned into it. He got the joke and leaned into it. He calls him a shitty actor. That's funny. Galifianakis is funny, man. He he had his moment. I'm glad he made his money. I'm both bummed and um grateful that we're not uh over gifted Galifianakis vehicles like Kevin Hart. You like the Jennifer Lawrence? Oh, Between Two Ferns? I didn't see that one. Oh yeah, I'm tired. I might have to give you a rain check on that thing, Rach. They're all too much. Yeah, for sure. The comedy, the style of comedy is too much for me. It gives me anxiety. I don't like to see people made fun of. Yeah, Leo's was good too. I've seen clips from Leo's. It might just be too tired. I might just be too tired. Tom Cruise seems like he's not a cool hang. And that's the other thing is like those interviews for me are contingent on whether I think they would be cool to hang out with. And Tom does not seem like a cool hang. He seems like a buzzkill. Nicolas Cage seems like a really cool hang, but he seems like an intense guy to try to get a hold of. Like that guy's still on a rotary phone. That's funny. She's off putting, so he says, "Well, you should get off putting." She seemed like a really cool chick too. And then she was in too much. I'm glad. Yeah, I get it, Rach. I like the play on words. I like it a lot. Um, she was overexposed too. I'm glad that she's not in everything. Her thing was like she was legitimately sexy and didn't want to sexualize herself in her movies. So she's in that movie Mother, right? I heard that movie is really good. Fighting some kids in the nude. Oh no, it was a brilliant idea for a comedy, Eric. And that's funny. I must have fallen out on her career when she stopped being so self-serious. She must have moved away from her ultra self-serious image right as I stopped paying attention. Zach is a nut, Eric. Oh shit. Well, I know why you were watching that movie, Rach. Yeah, she's cool. She seems like a legitimately cool hang. And you know, when I was single, she was sexy as fuck. But I don't look at women like that anymore. If it's religious and you didn't get it, it would probably be a movie I really like. Melissa Joan Hart was so hot. That's Buffy, right? It was Buffy, right? Yeah, we'll probably watch Mother together, H. I don't really like watching old movies alone. But I can do a movie night on Discord. I can be like, hey, I'm going to watch this old movie. Come and watch it with me. I like to talk through movies, but if you talk, I'm going to get pissy about it. Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Sorry, Eric. Those are the same girl to me. I thought those were the same girl. Uh, yeah, why didn't she? Sarah Michelle Gellar, Melissa Joan Hart. Come on, man. Same fucking name. It's the same fucking name. Um, I don't know why Melissa Joan Hart didn't get bigger. She did TV for years and years and years, and then she did that Ringer show. She's very popular among a certain group of women. Is it the GW, CW? Rachel, no. Rachel, no. She was so pretty. Geller was pretty too. What was the one who was in I Know What You Did Last Summer? She's real dumb. She was really pretty too. Yeah, CW. Called it. Melissa Joan Hart was real popular on the CW. Real popular. Told you Rach would know. I never liked Natalie Portman. I normally don't engage in this conversation, Eric. I must really like you and trust you. Normally I don't engage in this conversation. Normally I don't think about women like that, especially women whose job is to be actresses, not to just be beautiful. But Jennifer Love Hewitt is dumb as hell. But she was so beautiful in the 90s. Oh my god. She was a badass with Jean Reno. Her dad, Eric. Yeah, the three. I guess I have a thing for women with three names. Natalie Portman might not be who. Natalie Portman is Princess Amidala, isn't she? I think I was thinking about Tom Cruise's ex-wife, Nicole Kidman. Natalie Portman has this weird sexual trauma. Uh, she acts all of her characters that maybe it's her, but all of her portrayals. No, Nicole Kidman. All of Natalie Portman's characters seem post sexual trauma to me, and it might be that she just looks so young, and it might be the productions that she worked on in the early aughts after Star Wars. Was she in a movie about sexual trauma as a girl? Was she sexually traumatized as a young actress? Is that what happened? I can't. I really liked Thor: Love and Thunder, but every other Natalie Portman role I've ever watched, she just looks like sexual trauma to me. I don't know what the professional is. That's what I'm asking you. The Swan, she was deliberately portraying sexual trauma, but that was after V for Vendetta. That's what I'm saying is I have a feeling that she was I have a feeling that she was misused on set as a girl because her movies became very much about sexual trauma. To me. Ah, professional hitman. Okay. I said specifically after Star Wars. She wasn't allowed to emote in Star Wars. So she looks like who and what she is in that movie. But everything I saw her in subsequent to that. Yeah, that's the thing, Rach, is I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's my eye or if it's that the directors and cinematographers, that the camera itself was traumatizing her deliberately, sexualizing her in ways that were inappropriate to her role as an actress. And I could just see it on her face because of my sensitivity to sexual trauma. She has this way of smiling where she's like, please stop looking at my exposed vagina, uh, like that. It's a me thing. It's probably not anything. I've tried to be very clear that this is probably not anything that anybody else would see. But when I look at her, I see somebody that's experiencing sexual trauma on camera. I don't know if she's doing it on purpose, but I'm usually not wrong because, sexual trauma of my own. So I'm usually not projecting. When I see it and I'm uncomfortable by it, uh, I'm usually not projecting. She was great in Thor Love and Thunder, though. I want to be very clear. She was great in that movie. But I haven't watched a lot of her work because it makes me deeply uncomfortable. See, I don't like Keira Knightley either. And it might be the same exact thing. It might be the same exact thing. Like, I'm not trying to say these women are bad. By the way, I'm trying to say that the environment, the working environments, Flaca Chocha for sure. Keira Knightley is just skin and bones. But that was also the look. They were trying to get them to, they wanted them back then. Yeah. The studio execs were deeply, deeply toxic human beings. And so I'm not blaming the women. I'm saying that a lot of my reticence to engage in the conversation of whether they are or are not attractive is because their work environment was toxic as fuck. That deer is going ham on that tree over there. Really, he wants me to shut the hell up. She has this. Am I doing it right? Is this good enough? Thing that her eyebrows do when she smiles in her movies. And that's somebody who's gotten really toxic corrective feedback. That's a look of somebody who's getting toxic corrective feedback. And so it might just be her face. Maybe, see, I just don't like Mila Jovovich. Sixth Sense, not Sixth Sense. Fifth Element. Uh, wow. Lilu was a sexual awakening experience for me as a boy. But everything, she's got like AAA battery nipples, and that affects my ability to watch her movies. But she is a model. She is a model and not an actress by training. And she was in all those movies because her husband was a director. So I'm not undermining her career. I'm saying that I don't I don't refuse to participate in the conversation of her appearance because she's a model. Well, maybe her daughter can speak fucking English. Got to be careful kissing her in the neck. She'll poke your fucking eye out. With your nipples? You dual wielded your nipples in Monster Hunter World? You liked the Monster Hunter movie? I heard it was total garbage, but if you liked it, that's all that matters. I assumed also that she played it with a controller, Eric. Very nice. Very nice, sir. I missed that one. I missed the opportunity for that one. Very nice. Very nice. I couldn't I couldn't have done better myself. Right, right. You that game, that movie was for the fans, and the movie reviewers I saw watch it were not A, fans, or B, interested. And so the premise of them like getting lost in this stupid world that has like a Snickers bar or whatever, them getting all upset about the dumb shit that doesn't have anything to do with the fan service is kind of what I thought the movie was. Guilty Gear is a fighting game series I've always wanted to play because it looks slick as fuck. Oh yeah, it was so bad. It was super campy. The plot was dumb, but it did what the fans wanted. And it was for China anyway. They made it for China anyway. That's a Chinese studio. We know that, right? Like we all know that. You're allowed to like it. It was for you. What the fuck, Eric? I'm sorry, man. The character design in Guilty Gear is super fucking slick. Looks really cool. Are you sure that Capcom makes those games? I thought Koei made those games. If Capcom makes them, I'm just wrong. They're Japanese. I thought Koei made those games. Koei. Okay. Okay. It's Capcom. Okay. I'm not telling you you're wrong. I am taking it at face value that you know that franchise better than I do. I said I thought they were Koei. If they're not Koei, I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not challenging you. I'm saying if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong because I just learned. I thought they were Koei. The developer was Arc. What are you talking about? Are you talking about Guilty Gear? I cannot believe I'm persisting to stay awake. The fuck is wrong with me? Clusterfuck talk. He needs a lot of it too. Beauty sleep, if he's ever going to get to beautiful. Bandai Namco and Sega. And then Capcom must have published the copy she had. That's still all Japanese. None of that is Chinese. I was wrong. It's still not Koei. None of that's Chinese. I was wrong. I knew it was huge in Japan, but I thought the publisher was Koei. But yeah, Bandai Namco, Sega, Capcom. And anyway, he's talking about Guilty Gear, Rage. He's not talking about Monster Hunter. That's still all of this is still Japan. None of it's China. So I was wrong. I thought it was Koei. I was wrong. And that's a bummer that Guilty Gear never published its anime. That's a bummer. What'd I say when the cops startled me? Shit in my fucking mouth. Yeah, that's what I said. Where did they come from? I do remember that now. Look, the Mad Libs of how I put together exclamations are it's a little different than the way other people. Because I could have said, "Ah, shit in my pants." Never tossed one in the dumpster. I am trying to be a good person, Eric. I'm doing my best to be a good salesman who punches Dan in the face from time to time. And I might, since I can pick up that free bet. I didn't mean to. I was talking shit and my finger said, "Ah, this will be funny." That was entirely by accident. Oh, Jesus Christ, Derek. I think I might give a baseball bat to uh, Molly or Benji, to one of my dealers, and see what happens. Dan just turns and he gives me this perfect side eye. I was about to leave and he just gives me this fucking fuck is wrong with you look. Environmentally conscious. I don't think that's how reincarnation works, Eric. Yeah, there's not gonna be. I know what you meant. There's not gonna be a new schedule one tomorrow because you see what I'm doing. So I'm not gonna record schedule one tomorrow. I know it's been a few days. I know it's been more than a few days. The last one was really long. We had a lot of good laughs, and it's been a week. It's just been a few days. The few days since then have been heavy days, heavy labor days, big emotions days, and I'll have more. I'll have more schedule one soon, and I'm gonna figure out how to do 7 days to die. That's happening. We'll do more. You guys were very, very positive of the humor and hyperdimension Neptunia, so we'll do that. And core core keeper. I tried to play that on my own, and I was like, it just doesn't make any fucking sense to not be recording this. So That gives me a rotating lineup of stuff to do. And these, I owe Eric a lot of thanks for this, but these late night, these are popping off. So it's all a big old WIP, big old whip. But we're getting there. Good night, Eric. Good night, Rach. Good night, my 5 other visitors. Thank you for everything. Thank you for sitting and enjoying this book with me. I know, Rach, once you go back to work, um, you won't get to do these with me every time. But thank you, thank you, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to entertain you with the things that I have done to test myself, my intellect, my critical thinking, my understanding of reality, my place in the world as a religious person. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. S. I don't I don't say this enough, but I had I had given up. Yeah, we're gathered here today because he believed in me. And I maintain this wind down, even if it's not to a video game. And I insist on a my interests first approach because Mr. S believed in me. Like talking to Ranasha tonight, and I explained, I don't know you. I want to meet you where you're at and at your interests. That's what I want. But he was right. He was right. So thank you for remembering him. I can give him a gift here when I close this. Thank you guys. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. Every time I close these lives, it feels like giving up to me. So don't tell me what to do. Sometimes I have to give up to start again. You'll learn. It just takes exposure. It just takes exposure to me. Renasha was proof positive of that. Just takes exposure. You duck in, you say hello. Just takes exposure. I'm like a photographic negative, right? We all are. Just takes exposure to the light. I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the subs. Thank you for the Patreon memberships. Thank you for creating a demand sufficient enough now to me to need a Discord. I didn't need a Discord when that last one was made. So thank you. Tomorrow is a new day and we will attack it and we will win. Have a good night. Be well. Get your rest. Make sure you eat. Get your water. And come find me tomorrow. You know where to look.